certainly, as a matter of historical fact, it was the idea of a personal God that first began to accredit, if I can put it that way, the thought that individual human beings, in their individuality, were worthy of respect, and indeed infinitely so. Mm-hmm. That's a thought that just gets no traction in classical philosophy. If you're a worthy human being, Aristotle says, it's because you exemplify a certain type. You have certain characteristics or virtues which others of your type share and exhibit as fully as you do, but there's nothing in particular about you that's estimable or worthy or deserving of my respect or love. So personal love is just missing there, and it really only comes into the picture as a necessary consequence or implication of the idea of a created world, which is the love thing, if I can put it that way, of a personal God. But whether or not, having provided the indispensable entree for this thought, it is necessary to sustain it, that's a separate question. My view is, and I mean no offense with the image, but it just vividly expresses what I'm thinking, perhaps the idea of a personal God is like the training wheels on a bicycle that get you up and stabilized and moving in the right direction, but when you've really learned to ride, you can dispense with them. And not only can, but should, because they get in the way of your riding as effectively and well as you might. Now, that will sound like a crazy thing to say. Let me try to make it a little bit more concrete. One characteristic of human love, the love of one human being for another, as I've experienced it in my own incomplete and limited way in my life to this point, one characteristic of it is that when it's really, if it's genuine, it's a love of the other person, of the beloved, for his or her own sake. Yes. Mm-hmm. It just stops with them. It isn't because of this or because of that. They are the final target of your loving. And of course, if you're at all, how should I put this, humbly self-aware about the limitations of your effectiveness as a lover, you will recognize that you never love the one you do as well and as completely as you. There's always a shortfall, for sure. Mm-hmm. But if you think that the person you love is there and lovable because he or she is the love creation of another, however you describe that other, then your love of the other human being who's sitting across the kitchen table is bound to seem, on theological reflection, as just a, how should I put this, a stepping stone to a greater love in which this human love occupies just a place or a position, but it isn't the end of all things so far as your love is concerned. And that, for me, is an obstacle. That's why I said the training wheels become an obstacle at a certain point. It's an obstacle to living in and with human love in its full commitment to the value of the other for his or her own sake, period, full stop, with nothing else behind it or holding it up.
Please, go ahead.
Well, I think that could be a problem. It depends on what Christians call your soteriology. And soteriology means how are you related to God? If you say, I will get saved, blessed by God because I love people, now, then you're absolutely right. They are a means to an end. You actually are, you may be feeding the hungry, but you're actually feeding yourself because you think if I feed the hungry, God will bless me, take me to heaven, answer my prayers, and actually you're feeding yourself. You're not really feeding the hungry. That is absolutely right, and I'm glad you see that. It's one of the reasons why, to me, just being a moral person and having a sort of a generic belief in God, if I'm a good person, God will bless me somehow, just doesn't work. On the other hand, if you believe you're saved by grace, if the classic Christian idea is that my salvation is secured through what Jesus does, not through what I do. Faith in Christ means I already have my relationship with God is secure, it's not rooted in me. Then, now it's different. Because see, the Christian idea is that God loved me for my own sake. He got nothing out of it. The idea of God coming to earth, going to the cross, he got nothing out of that at all. I mean, we do not benefit him in any way, so he loved me for my own sake. Now, I naturally want to love other people for their sake. Nor am I loving them for my sake, because actually I'm not enhancing my salvation or my... So if your soteriology is right, you really avoid that problem. If it's wrong, you do exactly what Tony's saying, and it's a huge problem. And actually, Nietzsche talked about that. Nietzsche was very cynical about the way so many Christians so-called love people. He saw it really as just a way of, it was very paternalistic, it was actually very patronizing, and it was completely selfish, and that can happen. But that's how I'd fix that, sir.
You know, certainly, if I can put it in these terms, the vulgar view, which says, I want to get to heaven, and I see that my road is through loving other people, charitable, loving kindness here on earth, but I'm building up salvation points along the way. In the instrumental fashion that you were describing, that's no good. I completely understand why on a thoughtful and attractive Christian view of things, that's it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it certainly isn't very appealing, to me at least. I was thinking of something a little different than that, which is the person who says, well, I love him or her, but I have to recognize, I do recognize that they are there, held up and sustained. They're only there by the grace of a person other than themselves, a greater person. And so my love for them would be unsustainable. It would be inconceivable were it not for that support. Now, I'm not, going at it in an instrumental way. I'm not thinking of it in those terms. But my love of my friend or my spouse, my colleague, whatever, that is now conditioned on something which runs against the grain of the unconditionality of the love as I experience it and express it and try to explain it to the beloved and to other people.